We are with Karen MacNeil, the author of The Wine Bible. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
So today we're going to be talking about wine regions that perhaps people haven't heard of or aren't as familiar with, which I think is exciting because people sort of start out saying, oh, I love my French wines, or I love my, you're from Napa, but why should people kind of look outside the box?
Oh, I sometimes tell my students that the best way to learn nothing about wine is to continue to drink what you already know you like.
Right.
Right? I mean, there are 5,000 grape varieties in the world at a minimum. And yet, on any given night, most of us are drinking, maybe 3 or 4, choosing between 3 or 4 different varieties. So, if you think about it in terms of food, it would be unthinkable. If someone said, all right, you have to eat chicken and carrots the rest of your life, you'd be like, it would be unthinkable. And yet, we all tend to drink very narrowly. And so, I guess my message in part is, there's so many exciting flavors out there. Why not expand one's horizons?
And so what are some of the regions that people can start with, where, especially for those who have a little bit of trepidation around the subject, where are places that people can start that might have similar varietals where people can stay a little comfortable?
Yes. Well, some of the wines that we've brought here today are new, what I think of as new old regions. For example, the wine right in front of you here, this one is from Austria. Austria is a very old wine growing culture, but many of the wines are being made in a modern, fresh, light style. And if you've, Austria is on the border of Italy, actually. So if you can imagine drinking a northern Italian white like Pinot Grigio, it's just one baseball throw away to get to Austria. You might also consider starting right with our neighbor, Canada. Canada is making, without a doubt, some of the most phenomenal wines it's ever made. And Canada is truly a new place, right? But so they're just like the United States, right? The wine growing cultures of Canada are on both either the East Coast or the West Coast. This wine in particular is from British Columbia, and I love the wines of British Columbia. They are an extension of Oregon, Washington, and just north of Vancouver in the Okanagan Valley. This is a fun wine. This is a Tasmanian sparkling wine. And Tasmania, of course, is an island off the coast of Australia. And it's off the southern coast of Australia. So the wines, it's a cool region, and the wines, again, have a kind of crispness and refreshingness. So maybe instead of the usual cava or other Prosecco, other inexpensive sparkling wine, to pull out a Tasmanian sparkling wine is pretty cool. Hungary, we have got a Hungarian wine here. Hungary makes wonderful Sauvignon Blancs and Pinot Gris. This is one of my favorite new regions, old new regions, new old regions.
New to us.
New to us, Slovenia. Also right next door to Italy and Austria. And again, the wines have a deliciousness that is hard to describe because many people haven't tasted a Slovenian wine. But if you like freshness and energy in wine, Slovenia would be a great place to go.
And so when you're looking at some of these regions where perhaps you aren't as familiar with the producers, you aren't as familiar with the varietals, how do you look, how do you go into a store and say, okay, I'm interested in trying a Slovenian wine, but where do I begin? Are there certain varietals that people should look at where you say, okay, that's safe, or is it really about the producer?
Yeah, you can do two things. You can certainly take a variety and then just change the place.
Right.
So let's say you like Pinot Grigio. And you're used to Italian Pinot Grigio, move over to Austria or Slovenia. You're a bit guaranteed, right, that you know that flavor family, but this would be a new spin on it. So you could certainly do that, and that is a really comfortable and easy thing to do. But I have to say, even when I was just starting out many years ago, I always gave myself a kind of, I called it my wine adventure budget. I would just spend a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit on something I entirely didn't know. But at some point, you just had to, that's right, jump off the high dive and decide to give it a try. what's the worst that could happen? You didn't like it. Okay, now you know, and you're moving on.
Right, right. You may not visit Canada again, but you might love Slovenia.
That's right. Yeah.
And so are there other regions where if you want wines that are dissimilar, we've talked about wines that have a lot of similarities to wines that are there regions that you're excited about that are doing really different things that might perhaps be sort of totally out of the box for people?
Yeah, two places, and we'll start to see more and more of these wines in the United States in the next 5 years, are the Republic of Georgia and Turkey. This is sort of the mothership. This is where wine began 8,000 years ago. And we haven't seen wines from that area, at least in the United States, very much. But I would say, as I said, 5 years we'll see these wines, and these are entirely different flavors than anything that we've ever experienced. So I'm excited about those wines coming in. We right now have some wines from the Republic of Georgia.
So if you see it, grab it.
Yes. But you have to taste, I think, with an open mind, because the first thing that people do think is, wow, I've never tasted anything like this before.
And what's the impetus for these regions sort of coming up? Is it that they're historic regions and now there's wine growers going into those areas? Is it that they've been there and they just haven't been exporting to the U.S.?
Right. In many cases, it's that these were the countries under communism. And since the fall of communism, wine isn't fast, right? It takes a long time to plant a vineyard. It usually takes, from the time you acquire a piece of ground, it usually takes about 10 years before you have a commercial product. So in many of these great old countries and regions, and even right down to districts, the great famous wines that they were once known for were virtually obliterated under communism. And now that slowly places like Slovenia, which had formerly been part of Yugoslavia, have emerged from those political difficulties, they've rebuilt their industries, and the wines now are better than they've ever been before, but we haven't heard about them for about 60 years, but we will now.
And how can people who are interested in looking at more wine regions kind of see as these come to market? I mean, obviously, to learn more, people can buy your book, which is an extremely popular book, Wine Bible. But how do people know, as you say, as certain wines start to come on the market, there's obviously regions that we're not even seeing in the U.S. Where can people, keep track of those type of things? Is it just going to their local wine store? Is it online? How do you recommend people sort of keep up with that?
I mean, I often get turned on to these wines by sommeliers, and then I ask them where they buy it. Where did they buy it, right? And because if a som can buy it, you can buy it too. So first, I would say restaurants and wine bars are a good place to learn about wines, and restaurants in particular, wine bars, because you can often just buy a glass of something.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for giving us this insight and getting us excited about new wine regions. And obviously, if you want to learn more, you can pick up the Wine Bible. You will not be sorry. You will learn a lot. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you.